Welcome to another Quantum Conversation, brought to you by AcousticHealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and I invite you to sit back as we enter the quantum realm, that space of the greater part of you. It is your connection to infinite possibilities, infinite potential, and infinite mastery. Welcome to this quantum conversation. We are so pleased to bring really a master teacher into our conversation today. Maia Nartoomid has been bringing forth beautiful information on our planet since the 70s. She's a scribe and she works closely with master teacher Thoth. And we're going to learn Tehuti. We're going to learn all about this beautiful being and talk a little bit about inner earth and all of the happenings that are relevant for today that Maia has brought through decades ago. Maia, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm very happy to be here today.
So we're going to begin with your story. Can you share with us? You've been doing this for quite some time at a very young age, almost as if you were awakened on your whole soul path journey in this incarnation. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I began when I began in the womb, because my mother told me that from 4 o'clock in the afternoon on, I began kicking as hard as I possibly could. Just drove her out of her mind, and it went on for hours, but it was always at 4 o'clock. And I'm just mentioning that because it seems like I was already getting ready to start, But when I was 4.5 months old, I was born in Caripito, Venezuela, because my father worked for an oil company there at the time. And so when I was 4.5 months old, I'd make these funny little noises, and my mother knew it wasn't a diaper pin or anything. She just felt guided to take me outside, and it would be at night when I did this. And so she'd take me outside, and the stars would already be up in the tropical sky. And she said that it would calm me, and I would be looking at the sky. And on one occasion, I pointed and I said star at 4.5 months. So that really shows that I was already involved with this, that I came to do it. We all come with special missions and tasks, of course, but I'm just saying mine was kind of clicked in early, very early. So but the next really big thing happened when we moved to Arkansas. My father had a dairy farm there, and that was when I was 4. And at 4, almost right after we arrived, it seemed like, in this beautiful, Arkansas setting with the dairy farm and everything. And we had, of course, Arkansas, has all those crystals down there.
Yeah.
And, it's a hot spot for radiation, So I began having these experiences. We call them dreams. I say we, my mother and I, because we didn't know about astral projection, not in 1953, 54 in the Ozarks. But I would have these experiences where I was floating, and there was a beautiful mountain, and it wasn't an Ozark mountain. It was a desert mountain. We didn't have television. And once in a while, we'd go an hour away to see a movie, but, that was about it. But this was a desert mountain. And I would be flying, and then all of a sudden I was in it. And there were these beautiful people, handsome guys, really beautiful looking men. And they were sort of blondish, they seemed very light colored hair and whatever. And I don't recall that there were any women present in that particular scenario. And they were showing me these white boxes. Well, they were computer towers, and the lights shone on them and everything. I didn't 54 Ozarks, but that's what I saw, these boxes with these lights, and they would explain them to me, and they would explain how all of these things work. And I understood everything. I was, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, we were going through it all. And then when I came back, Akka woke up. I told my mother. Well, my mother was a really, really special human being. I just have to say that. We all love our mothers and think they're special, so I'm biased, but she really was. Because instead of saying, and this is so long ago, oh, honey, that's an interesting story, but that's just in your mind. That's the dream, your imagination, you just made it up. Or just humor me. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's nice. No, she said, oh, really? Let me write that down. And she wrote it down. In fact, I was doing these images of what I'd seen in there. Well, they were mostly, I was 4. They were baby images, but I was trying to explain it. And one thing I drew that looked like something very unusual, like a plasma thing. And I said, this is a clock controlled by the mind. So she typed it on she took the little napkins that I drew on with color pencils, and she typed it onto there, clock controlled by the mind. Another one, I said, this is a mountain with the measles. Well, what it was a picture of a mountain with acupoints on it, but for a 4-year-old that had just returned and didn't remember anything, I said it was a mountain with the measles. So these are the kinds of things that happened. And because my mother journaled this and kept track, she didn't go crazy or, oh my God, I've got an alien for a child. She didn't do anything like that. She just said, oh, well, let me document this. That's what she was there for, among other things.
How supportive. That's such a great inspiration for all parents to really.
Well, it is. It really is. And nowadays we have more parents like that. I don't think there were a lot of them in those days. I'm not saying there weren't any, but it was unusual. And so, my mother was 45 when I was born. I was her only child.
Wow.
I was a cesarean. So, we just had this special bond. Now, I loved my father too. He was a dear, precious person, but unfortunately, he died of a heart attack at 45, just one of those tragic things. He ate mashed potatoes and steak and drank too much, like all the people in the corporate world did when he was in, there. I mean, that was what they did. They didn't think they were alcoholics. They just drank a lot, but he was a wonderful person. And he wasn't like staggering around or anything. He just had too much liquor for his heart, So anyway, he passed away, but my mother continued with me as my guardian and my light shower, in many, many ways. I would never be here today without her. And I'm not speaking about being born. I'm talking about, I'm 73 now, and I'm 74. I just had a birthday. So, and I started, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So anyway, 4. Then, other things happened, a lot of other things. In fact, my friend Vera Galoran just wrote a book on my autobiography, which I helped her with, and it's out there on Amazon. If you just type in autobiography of Maia Nartoomid, you will come up with it. So anyway, then, but the next sort of big thing, I guess you could say, was, I guess I was still 4, and I had this really strong feeling for Jesus. Now, we weren't like, we were Christians. We went to Episcopal church. We weren't, crazy Christians. We were just, we believed in things, and we had open minds. My parents had very open minds. So anyway, but I just loved Jesus, and not in the traditional sense. I could just feel his energy, and I just wanted to know more about him. But what I read wasn't very satisfying, in those days. So my mother said, well, there's a book called The Greatest Story Ever Told by Fulton, whatever. And, that's quite a book. It's a really heavy, thick book. Several movies have been made from it. Again, I was 4, and I was just, it's funny, but I still sucked my baby bottle at night. So I had this big milk baby bottle. And she said, would you like me to read you the book, The Greatest Story Ever Told, since you like Jesus? She didn't think, well, she's 4. She just said, would you? And I said, oh, yes. So every night she read several chapters, and I lay beside her with a little bottle in my mouth. And she read the whole book to me. And when she finished and she closed it, I took the bottle out of my mouth and I said, read it again, Mama. So she did. She started over and she read the whole book to me again. So that was my beginning. Okay. So when I actually went to school, I went, something is really wrong here. I said, I don't like this at all. And yet it was, the law. In those days, you didn't have homeschooling and stuff. If you had, my mother would have done it in an instant. She happened to have been a former teacher, so she could have done it, but they didn't allow that then. So
what was that?
Well, it was very traumatic for me. Very, very traumatic. I had a lot of anxiety attacks. I mean, my life started getting really tense during all of that time. And finally, but I didn't do bad with grades, but homework and memorizing stuff, I was not interested. I realize now how I passed. I connected to the Akasha, but I didn't know that's what I was doing. I just go, I'm not reading this. And then I'd take the test and I'd pass it. It was a C, but I passed it, So that's the way I got by. And then in high school, in the junior year in high school, that's what they called it in those days, my mother let me out of the car one day and I had my books and everything. And I was going to go into the cafeteria that served as the study hall to wait until the bell rang. So I put my hand on the door. And I tell you, when I put my hand on that door, because it was a push door, it was like, I can't say electrical shocks. I didn't have anything like that. But there was an energy and it came into my body and it said in my mind, not in a voice, but in words, with a calmness. Calmness came over me. And it said, Christine, that was my name. If you go one more day, it will be dangerous. And I didn't get scared because it was so calm. I just took my hand away from the door. I walked back to the car because my mother always, to give me support. Now, she didn't think I was going to skip school, but to give me support, she waited until I went into the door. So I'm going to close this because it's dinging and I don't want it to ding. So anyway, I came back to the car and I entered the door and sat down and she said, what's the matter? And I told her, and she looked at me right deep in my eyes for about 2 seconds, which is a long time just to stare. And she said, let's go home. I never went back because at that age you could quit. And so that was that. I didn't go back. And about 6 months later, because I was a little depressed because I was like, well, I don't regret quitting school, but now what do I do? I'm 16 and I don't know what to do. And so my mother said, well, you're good at writing poetry. I didn't do a lot, a little bit. Why don't you enter this short story contest in 17 magazine? And she handed it to me and I'm going, well, okay. And I have a typewriter, I'm sitting there, I put my hands on the keys and boom. It was just like not automatic writing, but just this whole vista opened up for me. And I saw these people and I knew it was in ancient Canada. And they were not too primitive. They were actually like Native Americans, but they were very refined. Well, I didn't mean that Native Americans aren't. I just mean they were especially, something different about them. And they were in their villages and I knew the names of the people. I knew the towns. I knew the situation. And I knew that their ancestors had come from a continent that sank in the Pacific. I think I kind of knew the name Lemuria somewhere in my mind, but I didn't think it in. And I knew that the clouds were all gray. The sky was gray a lot because it had upheaval and it sank. So and they called themselves the people of the gray moon. So I wrote this out. I wrote 2 chapters and I went to my mother and I said, here. And she read it and she said, I don't think this is for 17 magazine.
Wow.
So that began our journey because I kept writing it. So my mother was in the mall one day.
Wow.
I don't know if they have them now, but they used to have book-stalls right in the center of the mall. And she was walking past one, boing. She stopped and she said she was just drawn over. And she said, what am I drawn here for? And she found right in front of her was a book by James Churchward on, mood. And
Oh my
so she
goodness.
picked up the book, she opened the book and she went, oh my God, because what she saw were the vocables that he'd traced that were supposed to be the vocables that created the language, the sacred language of the Lemurians, Mu. She saw the vocables made up names of my people and the towns, and they made sense. She was just like, ah. So she brought it back to me. So at that point, we went, what's going on here? And we had heard of Edgar Casey. Not that we'd read, I don't think we'd read anything on his, but we, a little clip is in a magazine or something because there's no internet. And we thought, oh, well, maybe this is, you're reading out of that. What do they call it? Oh, the Akashic. Or maybe we had to look up, but we figured it out somehow. The Akashic, I was getting this information. So we pieced it together. So this went on a while. And then in 1970, because I was 67, I believe, in 1974, after I'd been writing a lot and I wrote all this science, because I said to my mother, well, gosh, if I'm tapping into the Akashic, and I love science, I said, well, maybe I can find out something, ask us a little question like, how was the universe created? Like a little question like that, So I wrote this book, or short, but, called Universe One. It was all scientific treatises and whatever. I didn't know about quantum physics then, but that was quantum physics is what it was basically. But it talked about all of these things. So then my mother and I were watching television, and Edgar Mitchell was one of the astronauts was getting ready to go to the moon. And he said, well, when I get back, I'm going to quit being an astronaut because I'm going to form a institute on parapsychology. He didn't have a name for it yet, which turned out to be, noetics. So, and my mother said, oh, that's an idea. Because parapsychology is the only thing that ever came up, that had anything to do with mysticism. And she said, let's write him a letter. You write him, we'll write him a letter. So I said, sure, okay. So I wrote him a letter and I sent him some of my science. Well, maybe all of it, the whole Universe One thing, because it wasn't big. And we put it in a package and we mailed it. I don't know how we got his address, but we did. And we mailed it. So he went to the moon. He came back from the moon. He went into quarantine. Then he came out of quarantine. And then our phone rang.
Wow.
And it was Edgar Mitchell. And he said my mother answered the phone. So he talked to her first. And he said, he came into his office after quarantine, and all this mail was, he was a rock star, he'd been to the moon. So there's all this mail. He said he wasn't about to touch mail. He didn't know, he'd just have his secretary handle it, send a little thank you note, and that would be it. But he saw this package there and he said his hand was just drawn to it.
Oh my goodness.
He opened my package and he read a little bit of it and he called us and he said, I want to see your daughter. So conveniently, we were living in San Antonio, Texas. And of course, he was in Houston, Texas. So he paid our way, gas money, and place to stay in a motel. And he started researching me, or my science, or my science both, And this went on for a few visits, only about, 2, 3, or 4. I think it was about 3 or 4. And we went into these long discussions. And this was so long ago. I mean, nowadays we have Nassim Harriman, we have all of the science and stuff, but in those days you just didn't have that. And so one thing I said such and such, and he said to me, well, that's faster than the speed of light. And I said, yeah, I know. And he leaned over and he had a little red goatee, then he was redheaded in those days. And he said, and he had a little accent. I thought it was Texas accent, but it turned out to be New Mexico. He was born in Roswell. And he said, well, Christine, he said, the speed of light is no small potatoes. I've never forgotten that one. So anyway, we went on with this for a while. So then one day he came very somber and he came out and he knelt in front of me. My mother was sitting next to me. And he said, Christine, you're the most exciting thing I've come across so far in this research. He said, but I have to make a decision. He said, either I just quit everything else I'm doing and I work with you in your science, or I don't work with you and I continue the work that I set up to do with my institute and all of that. And he said, that's the path I set. That's the place I need to go. And, I wasn't horribly upset. I mean, I was a little disappointed, sure, but I just thought, what a gift he'd given me. He'd validated my work. Now, I mean, I'm a translator of this work. As I explained, translators can make mistakes. Translators can see it in a certain way because that's their viewpoint. I try to be as neutral as possible, but I'm a human being. So I didn't think even then that, oh, I know everything. Of course not. But I knew that there was validity in what I was doing. For an astronaut to do this, I wasn't just, playing games in my brain, So that gave me the incentive. I think I probably would have continued anyway, because it was such a driving force. Right from the start onward, it was a driving force. But it gave me a sense of peace about it, that I knew my direction had some traction in the real world. So anyway, that was that. And things progressed from there. I'm not going to give my whole life story, but, it's brought me through a lot of interesting, amazing things. You can read the book that Vera Lauren wrote. And even that doesn't cover it all. So here I am back in Crestone, Colorado. I was guided here in the 90s after my mother passed, and for work that I, connecting to this very sacred place. It's a unique and sacred place on the planet. And then because I had married during that time, there were things happening, and I left, and we went to Hawaii and, a lot of things. And then after the divorce, I thought I was going to stay in Hawaii, but I received a signal to come back. And I came back in 2017. And I've been here ever since. And I can't say anything with certainty, but I feel this is where I'll stay for the remainder of my time here. And there's a lot of wonderful things happening. My life has changed dramatically since I've gotten back. It's changed more than it's ever changed in all the rest of the adventures that I've had, and it's just a very rewarding time,
Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing your story. I just want to say you were always connected, and the number 4 comes up all over the place. You met Edgar Mitchell in 1974, and you're 74.
Yeah.
And
I was 4 when all the big stuff happened, 4.5 months.
And 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you started kicking your mom's belly in the womb.
I never thought of that, Lauren. Thank you for bringing that forward. Never thought of it. It's obvious, but I never thought of it.
Wow, just the 4s. Really quite spectacular. And so so you don't call yourself a channel, you call yourself a translator of the Akash.
Mm-hmm. I do. Because with a translator, you see, if you say channel, well, first of all, the whole science of it begs more than calling it a channel. So that's one thing. So you can, we'll talk about this later, but I have the video I just put out, on the Akasha. Will fill you in a lot more on the Blue Star Rising YouTube channel that I'm on.
Beautiful.
But the other thing about calling oneself a channel instead of a translator in regard to the Akasha is that assumes that you're just, I'm a channel. I'm just not here. Everything's coming through, And when you're working with the Akasha, you are translating the information. You're in a way a medium, but see, if you say medium, then you think you're not there and somebody's coming through you. So that's not a good word to use because that's not what's happening. But it's like, the information has to dance with you. It has to, like if I was a translator for English, a Spanish speaking person, and I was translating to you and I was translating Spanish to English, well, I would have to select my words. And, languages are complex things. If there's another translator sitting next to me, the same message might come through, but the words might be a little different. Or maybe a translator might not quite understand what that person's saying, and they think they understand, and they get a little off, So that's why Thoth encourages me to use the word translate, translating the Akasha in source translation or Akashic translation. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk more about Thoth and how you contacted with him, but I first want to go back to Lemuria.
Hmm.
Our light tribe here is absolutely resonant with Lemuria. In my own awakening process, that word Lemuria literally made my heart melt every time I heard it. And I wasn't sure what it was or whatever. And now so much more has unfolded that it is so beautiful. You were writing about Lemuria there as a teenager. And so do you, when you look at your past lives and the Akash, do you see your connection to Lemuria? Or were you just tapping into that information?
Yeah, I do have feel that I have a strong connection to Lemuria. And yes, I was tapping into that information. So it's really both. The
Yes.
same thing with Atlantis, but actually, I feel the stronger connection, soul wise, for me with Lemuria. Mhm.
Yes. Okay. Were you a Lemurian in Atlantis?
Um, no, I think I was a Lemurian in Lemuria, an Atlantean in Atlantis. But, and of course, we're dealing with time frames that are so vast.
Yes.
So you know, it's not just one lifetime. If a person has a feeling for Atlantis or feeling for Lemuria or both, they probably had several lifetimes, maybe quite a few in both areas. Now, Thoth, you know, I use the word Lemuria a lot because people understand that, but Thoth is actually, it was never called Lemuria. That was a later term. I believe Blavatsky or some others gave it, but he says that the continent was Mu. That's what Churchward says as well. And but you know, Lemuria has become ingrained in that whole field because everything is in a quantum entanglement. So you know, you can get triggered by either word, you know, because it's now one. But technically speaking, when it was alive as Mu, it was Mu.
Yes. And I lived on Guam in the Pacific there in Micronesia for 8 years. And I heard stories and still see stories of Mu. It is there and it's very prevalent, Mu.
Yes,
And
it
it,
is. Hawaii and Guam, all of that. Yeah.
oh, Hawaii, yes. I mean, yeah, that's a whole separate story. Wonderful that you live there. And oh my gosh, so synchronistic that you're in Crestone now. Okay, so have you had ET contact?
Oh gosh. Well, that's another part of the story. So that began just prior to meeting with Edgar Mitchell. I don't
Really?
remember exactly, but
And
it
isn't it
probably,
that
I'm
he was
sorry.
born in Roswell?
Yes, he was. I didn't know that all these years later. I found that out many years later. Um, but yes, I don't remember the exact years, probably 73, could have
Okay.
been 72, that the ultra beings from starships started coming into my bedroom at night. I mean,
Wow.
they appeared in front of my eyes. And they actually appeared to my mother, at least on 2 different occasions.
In physicality.
Yes, yes. And
Wow.
we saw them together because my physician, Ramul, see, I was having a little problem with them. And that was that when I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw a 6'4", 5" man standing in my bedroom, I went, ah.
I would
And when
be,
I screamed, not only they explained to me patiently through mental telepathy that I was disrupting their transmission that was, you know, beaming them in because they didn't walk through the front door.
okay.
And what it did, he said, it's very painful for us. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll try not to do it next time. And the next time I'd go again. So one time, Ramul, my physician, went to my mother and she opened her eyes and there he stood. Well, she was born in 1904, the year the Wright brothers flew Kitty Hawk, but it didn't bother her. She didn't scream. She just went, oh, hi. And he said to her mentally, would you please go into your daughter's bedroom? So she got up and walked in. Well, I opened my eyes immediately because you can feel the energy of these beings. And he was behind her. It was sort of funny. She's my height, you know, 5'1", and he's way up there. So I saw my little bitty mother and this tall person, a perfectly human looking person, but about, I don't know, 6'4", 5', 6" maybe, coming behind her. And I saw them together coming in, and that really freaked me out. And I screamed again. Then one time I woke up because I felt the energy, and there were these balloons all beautifully tied, and they came through one wall and they floated out and they went through the other wall. And I didn't scream. And I said, what were the balloons about? And they said, we were trying to find something so harmless, but you would see it come in through a wall and leave through a wall, so that worked. They really worked with me a lot. And I think finally I got a lot better. I'm just going to say that much. There were a lot of beautiful things that happened and events that happened when I asked them one time to help out the nephew of a friend of mine who was like 4 and he couldn't talk. I mean, he wasn't brain damaged. He just had a particular condition where his words wouldn't come out right. And the doctor said that he may never really be able to talk very well at all in his entire life. And I asked them if they would go work with him. And they said they would. And not about 2 weeks later, the little boy who could communicate with his aunt, my friend, rather well, because he used sign and she understood him. She just understood him basically. And the parents were not metaphysical. Oh, she couldn't dare mention anything like that to them. I think they were fundamentalists or something. But anyway, the little boy runs up to her. He's mouthing. He says, "Oh, and he's telling him a man came in his bedroom, had something over his mouth and a baseball bat in his hand." You think that would have scared him, but he wasn't scared at all. Well, Rameau, when he'd treated me at times, had this strange kind of thing over his mouth and this wand, baseball bat, and he would put the wand over me, but he had the thing on him. I don't know what that was about, but the little boy described it exactly. And guess what? In a few months, he was talking perfectly. And the doctors were saying, this is impossible. Now, I didn't keep track with him. He's a grown man today. If he's alive, I don't know. But it was certainly rather dramatic. There were many stories like that. I could just go on and on. So anyway, that was my experience with him. And they said, we're helping your physical body, because I've had a lot of health problems in my life, not severe, but with chronic fatigue, gut problems, spinal problems. And they said they were helping me so that I could continue my lifespan to do the work I needed to do. So obviously they did. I still have problems, but here I am, 74, and I don't do too badly. So
very vivacious. You're so tiny because your aura is huge.
Oh, thank you. So anyway, so they told me, I froze up. Is it going to come back? Yes. Okay.
Yeah. No, you're not frozen. You're good.
Okay. So they told me that they were preparing me to be able to communicate freely with they called him benefactor. I call it mentor now because benefactor seems rather strange, but that's what they called him. And they said, they didn't tell me his name or anything, but my benefactor, I knew it was a male energy, I guess you could say. But they were preparing me for him. So that he was with me all the time, but, I couldn't communicate. I couldn't know him until they prepared me. So then in 1977, like 10 years about after they told me that, they introduced me to him as Thoth. And I began to communicate with him. It was sort of touch and go at first, but within months, I was totally, doing it. And that's when they started fading away, the other guys, fewer times did I see them or anything. They just said, fairly well, we've done our job, And so, but Thoth never appears to me in rooms and stuff for my mother, but I've seen his hand one time with a beautiful ring on it. It was just gorgeously manifested. And one time I saw him as a green light, just 2 times. All the rest of the times I can sort of know him, feel him, see him sort of in my mind enough to create images of him and avatars of him, to a fair degree. But no real phenomena. But still, that's when the real work began, because then I could really get into the Thothic sciences and understand them better. And, the work really, really came alive then, Yeah.
Oh, goodness. All right. We will get there and talk about Thoth and who he is and all of that beautiful topic. Do you consider yourself, yes, an ET? Yes.
Well, not ET, because that's extraterrestrial. I know this is splitting hairs. But from the Thothic perspective and how he verbalizes it, not verbalizes it, puts it into language. extraterrestrial, he's taking that and assigning it, let's say, to off-world beings of various types. Anything from the little bug eyes grab you in the middle of the night, and he has a lot of interesting things to say about that, to you and me, kind of other beings from other worlds that have better technology, but they're still kind of, they mean well, but they're kind of checking us out, whatever. Then to the higher ones, they were like my friends on the starships that came in. They're really highly evolved spiritual beings. Now, Thoth is another animal. He's not that. He is an illuminary, he says. Not an ascended master, because he's never descended. but he's an illumined being, and he can incarnate, and he has. But he's a whole nother dimension, So there's extraterrestrials, ultra-terrestrials is what he used to call the like Noel and Ramul and the ones that visited me. But I'm not using that term anymore. I'm saying star kindred, which is another term he used. And the reason I'm not using it is some people have come out now using ultra-terrestrial for things that don't really match up, So yeah. I'm just not using that now. I'm just saying star kindred. But my material in the past has a lot of that in it. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So fascinating, Maia. Really.
So, you asked me what I consider myself. That's a big question. That's what I'm still working on, because, I'm obviously a human being. I've got my stuff to deal with, all of this. So I'm no hugely advanced being, but at the same time, I obviously have some awareness going on here. So I don't know what to call me.
An ultra human.
Yeah, ultra human, maybe. But I know that, we all have simultaneous and lives and things going on, not just past and future. We've got, because there really is no past and future, but we've got all these other dimensional things going on. So I know that I'm a star kindred being on some ship somewhere. How advanced, I don't know, but I'm there. And then I also am very connected to my inner earth opposite self, not opposite, but concurrent self, in the inner earth of Mikala. In fact, she said, I didn't realize this till many years later, but when I was 4, I named my doll Mikala. And later she was Mikala. And I went back. Thoth reminded me of it. And he said, remember when you named your doll? And I went, oh my God. So, yeah.
Okay. Is Thoth in Inner Earth? He's everywhere. He's in Inner Earth.
Thoth is everywhere, yeah. And he has an embodiment in the inner earth. When I feel I'm communicating with the person, that's generally who I feel I'm communicating with. I call it also, when I'm doing the Akashic with him and all that, the Thoth streaming. It's the streaming energy that comes through. And he used the word streaming with me long before the internet. So when they started saying streaming videos, I was going, oh my gosh, that's a Thoth word. So, there are different ways that all of this comes through the Thothic connection, from the personable, hey, I'm talking to Thoth, from the Thoth intelligence streaming energy through that's beyond the Thoth. When you listen to my new video, which I haven't up yet, but it will be up later today, on the incarnations of Thoth, you'll see that he calls his higher soul self Ushael. But that's not one that's ever incarnated, as far as I know. That's just the higher soul self. So really, it's Ushael I'm working with, but nobody knows who that is. So I say Thoth, because he's the one that, has had all these communications and these past lives that relate to the planetary whole,
Okay, so you have an inner earth self, Mikala, and that is amazing. So your physician, your ultra-terrestrial star kindred physician, Ramuel, was preparing you to do your service work, and your service work is with Thoth. How did you come to work with Thoth? What's that part of the story?
Well, they told me that he was going to be appearing in my life, my benefactor. They didn't name him. And I don't remember exactly the moment when they said, this is Thoth. I don't remember. It's just too long ago. But when they connected me to him, I started communing with him. it was he had what he called a scribe. I call myself now a scribe, but this was a scribe on the higher levels. His name was Osiris Hem, not the Osiris, but Osiris Hem, Hem. And so I started communicating actually with Osiris Hem, but he was talking to Thoth, and we were going da 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 da. And then finally, he just sort of blended away, and all of a sudden I just knew I was talking to Thoth. That's just how it worked. I don't know why there was that energy transfer, what caused it, or there's a lot I don't know. It seems like I know a lot, but I really don't know a lot. I just know it's been come into my field that I share, and it is kind of overwhelming because I've been doing nothing but this for 55 plus years. So I have the Vault of Thoth on the internet, which has it has 19 years of my former publication of The Source, which became Temple Doors, which was monthly. And when I say monthly, I don't mean a few pages. Some of them were 50 pages long. Mm-hmm. So I have all of that in digital format. Well, I think I'm missing one or two, but I have all of them, basically. And then I have some of my old manuscripts that have never been published in there, like the Merlin Chronicles, and, Under the Gray Moon, Daughters of the Gray Moon, the Laws of Mu.
Wow.
I have a lot of stuff like that in there. And then, I did have one book published by a real publishing company. It was called Red Tree, and that was in 1974 again. I think it was 74. And that book was published by Naylor Company, which was a San Antonio book publisher that published Western books. But Joe Nichols, the head of it, time, I don't remember how we met her. My mother was always the liaison. She had a feeling about people, and she knew who to talk to. And she just started talking to somebody and go, oh my God, she's telling them that. Oh Lord, they're going to think we're crazy. And it was always the right person. It was never a person that did think we were crazy. Nowadays, anybody can talk about that. But I mean, in those days, you had to pick and choose. My mother just knew who. And so she talked to Joe. I don't know how we met her. And Joe went, oh, wow. I never thought of that, but that really rings true to me. She wasn't metaphysically inclined, but it just, hit her. Red Tree was about Lemuria, Atlantis. It was about the migrations from these continents and different symbols. And I did actual physical drawings of some of the faces and the beings and all of this stuff. So Joe said, I'm going to publish this book. I'm the head of Naylor, and I know we do Western books, but I'm going to publish this book. So she set out to publish it. We'd already decided it was going to be published. And one day, the secretary came in and said, there's a couple here that wants to talk to you. And she said, well, okay. She wasn't doing anything at the moment. A young man and a young woman came in. I say young, they seem to be in their late 20s or something. They came in and they sat down, and they looked at her and said, we know you're about to publish Red Tree. She's going, what? She told me. She said, and we advise that you don't do this. And they just kind of gave her a stare, and they got up and left. She was like, what happened? She didn't tell anybody because she thought this is just crazy. About a week later, another couple came. They came in and they said, now she was like, okay, who's this going to be? And they looked at her and they were just filled with light. The other couples were not. And this man and woman, same young, and they looked at her and they said, it's important. It's very important that you publish Red Tree. It'll be okay. You need to publish it. They got up and left. I know this sounds crazy, but Joe finally came to us and told us, and I'll never forget the look on her face. She was just, this was a woman telling the truth, So anyway, then there was the Mike Douglas show. They always put their books, special books, and they wanted to see if Mike Douglas would take it, So they had a phone number. They called and said, we're going to send you this. No problem. We'll be looking for it. They didn't know who the person was, but they answered in the right department, a man. They sent it in. Nothing happened. They always have somebody would say, sorry, we're not interested in something. So they called the department. They said, we don't have anybody by that name here. And we've never seen a manuscript. So about a month later, the whole Naylor Publishing Company went bankrupt. I feel bad about that. But I did get my book published. So it's not published. I mean, it's not out there now, except, you can find a copy now and then for $200 or something. But because now we have Amazon publishing, I'm going to be publishing that book again. I'm going to get it out there.
Oh,
Yeah.
don't you love the technology that supports this work? The technology, that's a whole different conversation that almost is, in a way, in a positive way, in a positive use. It's fifth dimensional.
It is. It really is. It's wonderful. And, I thought to myself many times, well, why was it so important? Because that book's not that great. I mean, it's interesting. It's cool. But, and I thought, well, Thoth said, well, one thing leads to another.
Yes.
And if you had gotten on the Mike Douglas show, there are certain other things they blocked. It would have been a whole nother street. But, that's the way it is. And here I am with you today.
And so as we talk our next part of the conversation here, I just wanted to say you came into our awareness here through Lowell Johnson, who...
Oh, yes.
Do you know Lowell? Yes.
Oh, yes, I do. I mean, he's a recent friend, but he's a wonderful person. I recently met him, and he sent a lot of people my way.
He sent a lot of people your way, and his experience is quite astounding and incredible, and actually activating a lot of people, as you are. Get ready for more coming your way, Maia, because wow, what a master you are, really, seriously. So beautiful. Before we get into what Lowell brought and Lowell's story, Lowell actually had an experience. He was invited in to tell us, and to Telos in Mount Shasta. He was meditating outside on the mountain, and that's a whole different story. He shared with us the golden Taya. And so I want to get into a conversation about how that work done in the 70s relates to this year. I mean, these times that we're in the 20s of 2020. My goodness, it looks like the world is going to heck in a handbasket, but it's a purification that we can see. So we keep our eyes on the prize for New Earth, and that's fine. We'll talk about that.
I just have to interrupt you for a minute.
Please do.
You just said something. You said we keep our eyes on the prize. 2 weeks ago, I'm not going to tell the whole story, but I had a dream. Okay. And in the dream, all these things have to take place. And when I came out of it, Thoth said, the message is keep your eye on the prize.
I just got
So I just had to share that with you.
We have been saying that through all the divisiveness on our planet. We can all keep our eye on the prize. We can see how there may be differences in opinions from the programming that we've incarnated to take on and clear, but we all want peace. We all want happiness. We all want joy. I trust that every human heart wants that in their life. And so keeping the eye on the prize, beautiful. Well, thank you, Thoth. We're going to get more to Thoth in a moment. I wanted to ask you, though, you said your life has changed since you returned to Crestone. Crestone is a vortex. Tell us about the energy there. When I visited there, oh my gosh, there's so many temples and beautiful places. And then on the outskirts, there's just kind of the weirdness of it, but I don't hear birds in Crestone. It's kind of interesting. Maybe you do. Maybe it was just when I was there, I didn't hear any birds, but
I hear birds, not as many as in Hawaii, but I do hear birds here. But they're kind of different. There are a lot of crows, but I like crows. And then I hear some things that I think are probably the hawks, and I see hawks, and we have eagles here,
Eagles.
But I hear little birds too, but they're kind of in the background. So I'll admit there aren't a lot of them. But they hang around. They're here.
Well, that's good to know. How has your life changed since you've been in Crestone?
Well, when I was in Kauai, and I'd been there for 13 years, and after my divorce, which took place there, I stayed mainly because I felt I was too ill to travel, and where was I going to go? And I thought of Crestone, but I thought, oh, the hard winters, and well, they aren't really hard compared to other places, but I was living in paradise, and yet I felt I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just stayed because it is difficult for me to travel. And I'd broken my hip in Hawaii, divorce, broke my hip, got shingles.
Yeah.
So all those things happened in Kauai. And I'm a person. How do I explain this? I know I'm an old person by now, but I'm like, I've never actually gotten on an airplane by myself, bought tickets by myself. There's a lot of things I've never done. I've lived a very sheltered life, not pampered, but of necessity, sheltered. My mother took care of all those things for me. I was sickly, but also I had a purpose, and she knew that purpose, and she wanted me to focus on it. And so with the health combined with that, she just took care of things. Then when I married, my husband more or less had to do the same thing because there wasn't any choice by that time. And so, I don't know some of the simplest things. I just don't know how to deal with them because this is what I do. I'm not saying that's the right way to live. I'm just saying that's how it is. So I was in Kauai and I was like, I thought, well, I'll just stay here for the rest of my life. Well, Thoth had other plans, or the universe had other plans, and he talked to me about it. And when he indicated that I needed to go back to Crestone, it was very powerful, strong message. And I went, oh, I don't know about that. I can, all these negative thoughts came up. I'm a human being. Hey, money, health, distance, packing, I could just go through everything. Well, so I said, that's it. I'm just staying here. I'm not going anywhere. I have free will. Thoth always told me I have free will. I'm not going. It's settled. It's done. Well, then that night I had this visionary experience, and I was in the labyrinth over here, Kiara's labyrinth. I don't know if you've ever been to it. And I was standing in the labyrinth, and I looked toward, it was nighttime, but I could see anyway. And I looked toward the mountain, this mountain, which is Crest in the Stone, as Thoth calls it, Mount Challenger, but that's where a lot of things happen. And the land in that area was where my nonprofit, Spirit Heart Sanctuary, had owned property there, extensive, quite a nice piece of property, which we sold. One of those things you wish you hadn't done when we left Crestone in the 90s. But there was the land. I knew that was where it was. And there were eagles circling. These eagles were circling. And I received, you must return to fulfill the prophecy. And I went, oh, I didn't know what that meant, but it just infused me. I woke up the next morning and I said, I'm going to Crest. I'm moving back. And everything fell in line. My friends helped on both sides of the shore. Everything happened. I had a woman come and hold my hand on the airplane and take me through. She got the tickets and the wheelchair and everything and got me over there. So that was an absolute miracle and a beautiful trip and a beautiful experience that got me back to Crestone. So what is this business about fulfilling the prophecy? Well, I knew at the time, even when I heard it, was I was fulfilling the prophecy. I was part of it. That, pieces come together to fulfill a prophecy. So now this leads me to another story. I don't know if you want to go here, but how about going to Mount Sinai for a minute? Mm-hmm. Okay. So back in 1977, Thoth was directing, so to speak, a journey that my friend Dolores, now Estrella, was taking to many countries, but would wind up at Mount Sinai. On 8/8/88, she would be climbing Mount Sinai. And he said to me to tell her, because she made these trips and I was too sickly, so to speak, to go. So she made the trips. He said, tell Dolores, when you're walking up the mountain, look to your feet. He didn't say when to look to your feet. When you're walking up the mountain, look to your feet, and there will be something there in several pieces. I think he said 4. I don't remember if it's exact. Pick them up, wrap them up, and bring them back to Maia. Christine then. She was walking along, of course, and remember, all these New Agers were going up Mount Sinai on 8/8/88. So rocks were tumbling. I mean, there were feet trotting all over the mountain. A lot of things were loose. A lot of things were coming up, All of a sudden she thought, oh, I'm supposed to look to my feet. Going, there it was. This tablet with raised symbols on it in 4 pieces. I get chills even telling it now. She wrapped it up in toilet paper and put it in her purse. And in those days, you could get things, she just took it home and she got it back to me. So I'm holding these and I'm saying, okay, what do I do now? And he said, the Hopi tablet keeper will hold these tablets, not keep them, hold them and bring those energies into his being. It's important for the nation, the Hopi nation. It's important to do this. Now, this linked to way back in the 70s when he told me I would have something to do with uniting the Hopis and the Mormons. And that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so back to Hopi. So I have these tablets in my hand and I said, okay, where do I go to find the Hopi tablet keeper? He says, don't look for him. He'll come to you. So that was 88. So in 94, here in Crestone, and so a friend of ours who knew the story, called us up and said, the Hopi tablet keeper is here at Hannah Strong's. Get over here now. So we took the tablets. We went over to Hannah's place. And I told my story of the Rinpoche, because the Rinpoche was meeting with the Hopi tablet. They were doing a big ceremony coming up. And the Rinpoche was going to cleanse the whole house then. So everybody had to get out. But he said, you and I'm so bad at names, the Hopi tablet keeper at the time, can meet in the back room while I'm cleansing the house. You can stay in here. So my husband, myself, the Hopi tablet keeper, and his nephew, who was a translator for him, and my friend, who was a Sikh, the 5 of us were in the back room with the tablet keeper. And I told him the story. And I said, you were to hold him until you feel finished holding them. Well, before I tell the rest of it, this particular individual, he had gone to the United Nations and told the United Nations something he felt that he needed to tell them. But the other Hopi elders were not happy. They said, you should never have told that. And he said, I'm sorry. I was guided to do so. I had to tell it. And they said, well, okay, you're no longer the Hopi tablet keeper. So he had that taken away from him I think it was months before. And now he was holding these other tablets. So he held them. I think it was for 30 minutes. That elder man just sat there like this. His eyes were closed. He was into it. He was holding him. And as he was doing it, the whole energy changed in the room. Remember, the Rinpoche's doing the sacred ceremony in the whole house. His nephew, tears were just streaming down his nephew's face. So when he finished, there was a table in front of us. He put the tablets down and he put the tablets together and they fit. Not perfect, not like, with no crease, but they fit. Well, they don't fit. There are pieces missing. When we got home, the first thing we did was, it doesn't fit. There's big pieces missing. And we all saw this tablet come together in front of us. It was amazing. So, okay, I know I seem like I'm off target, but let me go back to fulfilling the prophecy. I'm to return to fulfill the prophecy. And he said, you must bring the tablets back into the Crestone energy, back into this sacred valley. That was one thing. Other pieces are not revealed to me yet of the fulfillment, but that was so I did. And then a friend of mine came and said about 6-7 months later, maybe a year later, that he was meeting with the Hopis. And, he was going to be meeting with them. He'd gone back and forth with them. And all of a sudden, Thoth just came through and said, have him take the tablets to these new Hopi elders. And, but they're to return. The tablets are still to come back. So he took them. And the Hopi elders looked at them and they went, oh my God. And they started getting these books out and they showed him pictures and they were really hot on these tablets that came from Mount Sinai. And the tablets, not perfect. You can see the raised marks, but you kind of have to, look at them to see it. But they were examining them and everything. They wound up keeping them for a few months, but finally I got them back, and they're under my altar right now. So that's one part of fulfilling the prophecy. But this area, I had been told when I was here before that the sacred on, which is the original true ark of the covenant, not this one that they took out of Sinai into Jerusalem. That was the one they had to create, lesser version, because the other one was not allowed to go with him because of the calf incident and all of that. But the original ark, which is Thoth calls the sacred On, he has names for it too, that was translated down into Tibet many eons ago, before it was Tibet, and eventually made its way to Atlantis and with Thoth, and it came, Thoth has a lot to do with it. Finally, it arrived in Mount Sinai, and it had left Mount Sinai and come back to Mount Sinai. And you say, well, how could this happen? Well, for the most part, not all of it, but for the most part, it just translates. It doesn't, you don't have to carry it, although Thoth did at one time have to carry it. So anyway,
wow.
I was here before. They said the thresholding chamber in this mountain here had housed the sacred On before, and it was to return here in the future. And I thought in the 90s, oh, that's nice. Maybe 100 years from now, 200, 300, who knows, it'll be back. Well, when I was in Kauai in 2013, they said, we brought the sacred On back. It's back there now. I went, and I'm not. So I thought, well, that's it. It's there. I'm not, I was served a purpose, and now I'm not there anymore. Of course, I return to be here with this. And the work that I'm doing now that Thoth has given me, called Quantum Logica Interactive, works directly with the streaming and a lot more. And, I'm not going to overwhelm you with all of that, but it's it all fits together. So this is my work now, with not just the On, but with the whole energy directive that is coming through that device and into the inner earth with something called the Hierophi, and on the starship with the Tetraphi. There's a whole linking of this. And I have a whole group of people all over the world, mostly in the United States, but some in other countries, who are part of the team. And we have a group site on Circle Communities, and we're doing this work together. We have devices that we use, which are only tools, but they help us to stream these energies all over the planet. So yeah, that's what I'm doing here.
Okay, thank you for sharing that story. That is amazing. And it really illustrates the long journey, the soul journey, and how we're all connected. And wow, so much more. Okay. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Amazing. The synchronicities with Crestone and just these magical places. And so let's come to this topic. And I know Thoth or Tehuti has talked about this as well. The golden Taya. We just recently learned about your work from the 70s, the golden Taya. And now some are concerned. It's like, wait, we only have 2 more years. Something was supposed to happen between 2015 and 2025. And so has that changed now? The golden Taya, what are the golden Taya, and how do they relate to today's world? Has it changed? Has that prophecy shifted because of the collective awareness on it? More awareness?
Yeah,
Good.
in a way it has. It has shifted. Because but the dates that he gave hold in the sense that things will happen. Mm-hmm. But what will happen has shifted, because we are being given a greater dispensation to work longer on this. You have to go into, I have a video that I put up rather recently. It's my gosh, it just went over the moon with the views, which I generally don't have because I don't have a very far outreach. I'd like to have a better one, but right now,
and those videos are beautiful.
Thank you.
And everything.
Well, this one is on Pyramidus Radius matrix. The Pyramidus Radius matrix was put out just recently. Not the 101 one. That's a little older that I just put up as a follow-up, but the longer one, which is, I don't know, 40 minutes long. And in that it explains a lot of this. So I'm just going to encourage people to go to that video. But I've really forgotten what you asked.
That would the YouTube site is blue.
Oh yeah, I know what it is. Golden Taya. Yeah, okay. I just had a brain collapse there. Okay, Golden Taya. So the Golden Taya was presented to me in the 90s, and what they were telling me was there was certain land areas that were designated, and some of this can shift. Okay, it's like a field of energy. Okay. Some of it can shift a little bit, not a lot, but it can shift and add a little bit more, maybe subtract a little here. But basically, it stays in a pattern. And these Golden Taya areas are allotments that will translate into the new Earth star. What Thoth calls that. It's really a shift from a world system 1 to a world system 2. World system 1 is a world of entropy. And there's a lot more to it than that, but let's just say that for now. And world system 2 is syntropy, moving into the center of consciousness. And you don't have to have dead bodies lying around that you have to bury and stuff. You just move from one, envelope of experience to another, and you keep your team together, and you expand and grow. It's kind of, it's a lot like when you pass from you pass from life and you go into these other realms. The difference is, well, there are several differences, but the main one is that with the new Earth star, a world system 2, you are changing the baseline. See, we have a baseline we always come back to. You incarnate, bam, back we are here. Bam, back we are here. Well, the baseline changes. You don't have this anymore. It disappears. You have a new baseline, and it's in a world system 2. And that is the difference. And there's more difference to it than that. It's not quite so ephemeral as when you leave the body and you're just in the spirit form, because you do have bodies, but the bodies are formed in a higher dimensional experience. We see things as either in the spirit or in the flesh. Thoth said there is no such thing. It's demarcations, denser, 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 lesser, lesser, lesser. And there's areas of physicality that are far more, in another vibrational experience that are not as dense as this one is. Therefore, you don't have to die, get old and die and leave a body. You just move into another experience, but you're still taking an energy, matter with you. He used to say to me, matter does matter. So anyway, that's kind of how it goes. So back to the Taya. So the Taya are the land areas that are going to demolecularize, I guess that's the word, into light frequencies and travel with us, because we're not going to a new world. We're going to a new Earth. And that's why he calls it the new Earth star, star being because it's a higher frequency. And so the Taya areas are land areas that are going to translate. And we're going to be translating our human bodies, those of us in human bodies at the time. Those of us that are not, we're still going to be present and doing these things. We're just doing them a little differently. But it's important that as many people as possible that are holding the consciousness on this planet take their bodies with them. Not, like in a spaceship, but as a demolecularized genetic package. Now, you can reform it on the other end. I mean, some old lady like me says, I don't want to take this body with me. I want a brand new one. Well, when you get over there, you get a brand new one. But it's the light codes, that you're translating into the field. Whether you're 4 years old or you're 80 years old, you're translating those light frequencies. So you have the land and you have the people. Why isn't the whole planet going? Because there are areas of the planet that need to stay behind. They've served their purpose and they're not translating for various reasons. Not because, it's so bad there, we're not going to take it with us. Some areas have been polluted to a degree that is unfortunate, but there are other reasons too. For instance, the Giza Plateau, the Pyramid of Giza with its satellites is a primary engine for the translation point of what Thoth calls light principle 40, which is the flashpoint of actual planetary translation. And yet it's a booster rocket. It doesn't go with us. It just boosts us. It forms the pattern, but it stays. It's not Golden Thailand. You'd think, of course it would be. No, not because it's not a good place. It has its purpose. Everything has a purpose. Now, the areas that are going with us, some of them will form like in a dream. You have a dream or you have a memory of a place. You remember. I can close my eyes and see this mountain out the window in here. I can see it, but it's not exactly right, is it? It's a little different. So when it rematerializes, it will rematerialize sort of like it is now, but it's going to be different as well. And they want it that way. They want a certain familiarity because we're moving into a zone he calls Numa zone. That's just a name, but that's what he gives it. And it's the first stage of the new Earth. And in that first stage, we need our teddy bear with us. We have to have familiar things. They're not exactly the same, but they're things that comfort us. They're things that orient us. Oh, I understand the orientation here with spirit. So now I'm going to have it there too. It's a little different, but now I can orientate where I am. We need those things at first. That will shift, that will change, but that's the way it is organized. So the golden Taya holds those programs of light that are intended to go with us, along with our, physical, genetic properties. Now, you don't have to be, you will be, if you've chosen this ascension element, which you choose in your soul being. You don't have to be a perfect human being to do it. You have to have the passion, the desire, and you don't have to know these Thoth words or know everything I'm telling you here. This is interesting to know, good to know, but you don't have to know it. You can be a dairy farmer out in the Ozarks. You never heard of such a thing. If you're a good person, you have love in your heart, you do the best you can with life, you have a passion for helping humanity, and you love the earth, you're going to be translating. And you don't have to know all this fancy stuff. You're going to be on a golden Taya land area when you translate. It's just going to happen. If you're not living on one now, you're going to go visit your cousin Elmer, and he's on one, and boom, it happens. I'm being a little facetious, but you know what I mean. It's going to be the right place at the right time. What matters is if you're in the right place at the right time in your inner being, that's where it is. It's not it's not location. However, that said, we are in a period of time now when those states, and this is not a scare tactic or anything, he's just saying the truth. We're going to need to realize that we need to be in places that remove us from extreme distraction, from extreme negative elements, from people who are around us who are liable to panic and are so unaware of the situation, maybe good people, but they're unaware, they're liable to panic. And not only, your safety might be involved, but your energy field might be, pulled upon so completely you can't focus on what needs to be focused upon. So in that regard, you need to think, well, should I be somewhere else right now so that I can organize my life better? Maybe you're not going, maybe LP40, the translation moment, is not going to happen in your lifetime. It could be 50, 20, 100 years from now. I don't think it's going to be too far, like thousands. But a person my age, I probably won't be in the body at that time. So it's not about, I got to be where I got to be for the, moment of the, no, you need to be where you need to be for this lifetime now so that you can express your spiritual mission, your spiritual energy in a way that is not distracted, that is not pulled down, that is not threatened physically, so that you can be what you need to be. Now, no place is perfect, not Crestone, not Sedona, not any of these places, not Costa Rica, but there are places where we are that are far better suited to hold that envelope of light for us. And on a very practical level, they can form what Thoth calls the arc lights, the arcs of light, ARK and also ARC. And these are places with sustainable communities building, and people helping people, and free from a lot of the contagion that's out there right now. And he says that it will begin to move into this pyramidus radius energy. And as it does, we're already moving into it. As it does, it will form protection in a way that, well, for instance, in the 1990s, I was here, and he said, there'll come a day when people will drive down the main road out there, and they won't even see the turnoff to go to Crestone. Even if they're looking for it, they won't be able to find it because they're vibrationally not able to enter the area because it's become this light arc, And now if they change that frequency, then they can see it, and then they can enter it. It's up to the person. It's not a God pointing a finger or anything. So that means that these areas will be protected. They won't be idyllic. We will have challenges in them. There will things that we will have to do to experience a better experience in life here. But they will have that frequency that supports and sustains that movement in our consciousness. I know I'm talking an awful lot, but I have an awful lot to say. Anyway, so that's, you ask about the golden Taya. I wanted you to see how it interlaces, it interfaces with all of this whole picture, because see, that's the thing. When I go back into my issues, I have paper versions that I have. Fortunately, almost all of that is in digital now, but I have old files with notes and things that are just amazing. And they are, they're old enough now, they're beginning to look like the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, they're just crinkling up. But when I read all of this stuff and I go back, and just pull something out, I'm looking for something else, and bam, I read something, I go, oh my God, and because it makes sense now. When I wrote it, it was like, well, that's interesting, but now I go, oh my God, because it relates. That's what my videos are about now. You see, most of my work is in video form, because I'm taking the older passages that are just like for now in the core science that's for now, and I'm putting it in the videos. But then I say now in 2020, 2023, let's look at it from the perspective of now. So I read it and then I talk about that perspective. So that's what my videos are about. And I try to keep them short, but they're very nutrient rich. So they're from anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour long. Most of them lie within 30 minutes, because I know people don't have a lot of time. And I realize that my work is overwhelming when I try to express it, like on a show with you here now. I either don't say much, and we have, we don't have much going on here, or I say a lot. I can't find a middle ground, because there's just so much relatedness. It relates. You can't just tell this part, because this part connects to this part. I received this part in 1979. I received this part in 1985. I received this part in 2005, and you have to put them all together to see the enormous picture that it makes with all of this.
It is truly incredible, your life work with all of the translations that you've brought from the Akash, and with your communion with Thoth. And thank you for sharing. There is so much more that we could cover. We're going to have you back, because there's a lot more to cover, a lot more questions as well. But as we do have more time, but I want to focus my last question, and you can take as long as you wish for it. But as we move forward, New Earth is that's the eye on the prize for me, New Earth. And so as we try to define New Earth, some would say New Earth is already here. Some would say New Earth is within. New Earth is a vibration. What is your definition and understanding of New Earth?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Alexa's interrupting us here. I forgot to unplug her.
Does New Earth have Alexis?
No, I don't think so. Hopefully not. She's a real pain sometimes. So what was your question again?
What is New Earth to you?
What is New Earth to me? Yes.
And what do you see of New Earth?
Well, it is here now, in a sense, because you see, if you remove the element of time and the linear consciousness,
the image behind you, that's New Earth.
Yeah, you're connecting to it, because time is not an illusion. Thoth always corrects me on that. That so much is an illusion. There are things that are illusory, yes, but there are things that we are calling illusion that are not, because he says if you make it real, if you have what he calls consensual reality that creates what we're in here, it's real, but it's real within the parameters of that consensual reality. So in consensual reality, there's not a New Earth yet, but outside of that, it's been existing forever. So yeah, it's kind of mind bending, but that's just how it is. There are all these different reference points you can give, and you're not getting to the New Earth. Thoth always says to me, well, you're not going to have a planetary ascension until you have a heart ascension. And there has to be enough people having the heart ascension for it even to the planetary ascension to even come forth. And those who are ascended in the heart ascend with the planet. But again, you don't have to be a high guru to have a heart ascension or a planetary ascension. There are levels and degrees of that. And there's a huge dispensation that's been given, so much so that when the the time comes for, and the movement happens, and we have that flashpoint of LP40, and we move into the newer star, there will be souls assigned to come back. You know how Jesus had to translate and then he could come back? When he said to Mary, touch me not because I've not translated yet, you know, and then he could come back and Thomas could touch him then because he had gone through the process. So we will translate, but then certain souls have the God job to come back and help those translate, that at the last minute they go, oh my God, I see the light now. I really need to do this. I want to do this. My heart's there. I just didn't see it before. The veil has been lifted. I want to do this. But now they're kind of in between. There's a huge energy that comes out of the center of the earth, and it's like a humming sound, like the humming of 1,000 bees. And there's a pressure on it. You can see things flashing and flashing, you know, like different dimensions coming in, like you know, and it's going to be very confusing for those last stragglers, you know, to get across. So those that have already translated, certain groups will come across and they will help them. They will guide them through the eye of the needle. So there's a lot more to it than that. Oh, we're here now and then we're there. There's a whole, it's science. Science is spirit and spirit is science. And there's a scientific understanding of the whole process of this translation. And even LP40, I'm not even going to try to tell you what it is because it's written, I have it and you can listen to it on the videos, but it's very scientific what it really is, that translating moment. But just say it happens and we get from here to there. But there is a process in the inner being that is really involved with it all.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. You and I are going to be discussing offline opportunities for people to perhaps ask you questions based on some of the science of translation. We're going to let everybody know if and when that comes about. But there's two things I want to say. One is heart ascension. How would you define heart ascension? Is it totally getting out of the mind and letting the heart be in charge the whole way, or what?
No, actually not, because the mind is sacred too. And it just needs direction, you know. Are you familiar with the Heart Math Institute?
Yes.
Well, it's along those lines. It's a little more, but it's along those lines. Heart resonance. We must experience heart resonance. And that means there's a resonance between the brain and the heart. And we know there is a brain in the heart. At least Heart Math has discovered that, but Thoth talks about it too. And the mind. So there's a resonance between those two fields. Because you know, the heart is already there everywhere. If you just let it unleash it, it's there everywhere. But you need to have a plan, a schematic, a grid, a sacred geometry. And the sacred geometry of the heart doesn't figure in the details. And the mind in the brain does. And so when you have a unity between the two, you get that signal. However, there's a caveat here. The mind in the brain has to be able to connect to the greater Akasha and turn loose of the lesser Akasha. Because the only reason we can think, the only reason we know that we took the kids to choir practice or soccer game and we got to pick them up again is not because we've got gray matter telling us. The gray matter is just the connected field, the connected tissue. It's the lower Akasha that says, you left the kids at the park. You got to go pick them up at 6 o'clock, you know. And that comes in and the gray matter goes, boom, I've got the message. I remember. And it does it. Well, the lower Akasha is breaking up. It's intended to break up. It's breaking up. That's why even young people now are going, wait a minute, I had this, and then now I'm, you know, because of that. When it really starts breaking up big time, it's a natural process for the soul being to start connecting more and more to the higher Akasha. There will be some people, though, that are going to fight that. They're going to fight it with everything they have. And we kind of know who they are out there.
We're already seeing
and so if they're going to basically lose their minds, I hate to say that, but that's what's going to happen. But in between, we've got a process here of being aware that we want to help that natural process to connect to the higher Akasha, because the higher Akasha does not have memory like we understand it. It doesn't remember where you left the car keys. It says the gnosis is, the car keys are in the drawer because It's just a knowledge. It's a with. Everything is connected. It's different from remembering. The lower Akasha works with memory. The greater Akasha says, gnosis. I know where it is. I know what to do. I know where I am. And then it brings into the higher and higher fields. So, where was I going with all of this? You asked me a question. I can't even remember what it was. What did you ask me? Do you remember?
Heart ascension.
Oh, the heart ascension. Yes. So the heart ascension is a connection between the heart and this higher aspect of the brain. Because, you've heard stories of people that like got a pole, they were in a hurricane or something, and a pole went right through their head, and they walk into the hospital and says, I've got a pole. And they can think everything's fine because they're so connected to the higher Akasha, or maybe it forced them into there. I don't know, forced is a wrong word, but it connected them somehow that, they can still think, because that's where the source of thought is, first lower and then higher. It's not in the gray matter, but the gray matter gives the, like the clay where you can impress the image,
Okay, that does answer my question of what's the task. And the task is heart resonance, working with the mind. I love how you called it a grid, a sacred geometry grid, and connecting to the higher Akash. That is the task at hand, connecting to the higher Akash. And so as we say goodbye, Maia, any final thoughts on all of this and our task in these times?
Gosh, well, even though from my perspective, what I bring through has a lot of detail to it and a lot of science to it. And some people go, oh my God, I just, mostly though, people say, well, I feel it. In other words, and I'm starting with my material here, but I'm going to expand. When they listen to a video I've made, or they read something and they go, well, my mind just couldn't take all this in, but I felt it.
Yes.
So I want to read more. So I want to look at more because I feel it. And that's true of anything, not just my work, anything out there that brings you into that heart resonance. That's what heart resonance is. It's not warm and fuzzy. That warm and fuzzy is good, but that's not what it's about. It's about resonance. So when a person listens to one of my videos or reads some of my material and they go, I didn't understand a word, but I felt it. I want more.
Mm-hmm.
That's true with anything out there. And so go to where you're drawn for that. And don't say, well, my mind just couldn't make sense of it, but I feel it. But my mind couldn't make sense. Don't worry about your thinking brain. Feel the resonance in your heart. When you go to a source that you're attracted to, don't be disillusioned. Don't think, oh, I'm not advanced enough. I can't do that because I don't understand it well enough. So I'm not advanced enough. No. You're probably more advanced because you're feeling it in the heart. You don't need all the words. Just let them go through, trickle through, and just go into the heart, Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. You have put us in our heart right now. Your whole conversation was an activation. Your life story is an activation and an inspiration for all of us. And there's more for people to explore in your huge volume of work. Maia's YouTube channel, again, is called Blue Star Rising. We hope that everyone checks that out because you will feel the love in your heart when you listen to the videos. Not only is it a beautiful, enjoying listening, but it's so beautiful. The images are so exquisite as well. Really wonderful work. Thank you, Maia. This has been exquisite. Thank you so much.
Well, it's been my pleasure because, this half part of my life, since I returned to Crestone especially, is what I lived the rest of my life for. In other words, all the accumulation of the material and the energy and the experiences and all of that. And I guess that's true for a lot of people, but I'm talking about this specifically, work with Thoth and all of that material. See, now I can draw upon it. And I didn't even know what it's for, most of it. And now I do. And I can draw upon it and I can hand it to people in a modern way, with the AI art and the technology we have now that allows them to integrate it. When I was back in 73 5 or whatever in San Antonio, and somebody invited me to do a talk at the San Antonio University on Lemurian psychology. I don't know whoever got the wild idea that I would fit in, but they had me in this little class of young people, and I was head on the blackboard, and I'm poking, and I'm saying, oh, and they just sat there. And when I was finished, nobody said a word, and I said, well, bye, and I left, and they just sat there because they didn't even go to their heart. They didn't know. It was just now. I mean, all of that is for now. And that's why I'm here now. And that's why the boys upstairs kept me alive with their little instruments so that I could get to be this old or live in this period of time so that I could give this forth to people. And that is my passion, to do that now, And there are a lot of wonderful things coming up. We'll discuss later some really fabulous stuff, but I'm not at liberty to talk about it right now.
Okay, well, we are staying tuned to you, and we will be exploring more of your work. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Maia Nartoomid. Thank you, thank you.
You're more than welcome, dear.
Thank you for listening to this quantum conversation, and thank you for dancing with us to the cosmic heart. As we raise our own vibration, we raise the vibration of the planet. This show is dedicated to you and all awakening hearts, as we are here to shine our bright light and amplify our love. Access all quantum conversations, special offers from our guests, and online healing retreats by visiting acoustichealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and from my sacred heart to yours, I honor your magnificent love and light. We leave you now with music from the universe. Music literally created by the universe, as musical notes were assigned to mathematical equations. The result is this beautiful music, available at acoustichealth.com. Namaste.